All right, see, Hebrews 5:11 to 14. Let's see what Bible Knowledge Commentary has to say. Here's concerning him, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. But though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God, and you've come to need milk and not solid food. See, a careful examination of this passage. Unbelievers can't be in view here, who could lose their salvation. These are believers. We're not talking about losing their salvation. We're talking about, as we read through this book, his epistle, going to be punished. Not loss of salvation, but temporal judgment. For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant. So these are not unbelievers, these are believers. But solid food is for the mature who, because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil. The third warning, which is 5:11 to 6:20. This guy does a thorough job, this author of Hebrews. The author had barely begun his consideration of the topic of the Melchizedek priesthood of Christ, but he felt constrained to pause for another warning section before proceeding further. This was due to the immaturity and sluggishness of his audience, which made him wonder how much exposition they could digest. They've retrograded so much. No doubt he hoped to arouse them to greater attentiveness to the truth he had wished to unfold. How many times have I attempted somebody who's fallen away from the faith, met up with a group, charismatic largely, they have a lot of fun, casting out demons and tell the devil go away. But at the same time, he wanted them to face squarely the danger of remaining where they were, since they could lead to tragic retrogression. You go in the charismatic movement, that's where you go. You lose sight of the gospel and get more and more enamored of spiritual gifts and supernatural items. Then you begin to realize if you don't have supernatural gift, you're not born again. Just all kinds of wacky things. The problem of immaturity, 5:11 to 14. Failure to progress in the faith, 5:12 to 14. This little section is of special interest because it shows that the recipients of the letter were people to whom better things might have been expected. They should have been mature Christians, since they had evidently been converted for quite some time. They ought to have made much more progress in the faith than they in fact had. The author is troubled by their immaturity. Sad to say, most churches encourage immaturity because the pastor himself moves around in the Bible and twists and turns it so much that you got to lose your faith because he doesn't stay hold to the Word of God as it's presented and written by the authors. 5:14. But solid food is for the mature, who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Mature people need solid food. The teleoi in the mystery religions for the initiates, it is unlikely, however, that this is its meaning here, but the word d, shows the contrast to infants in verse 13. The reference is clearly to the mature who have trained themselves. The New Testament makes considerable use of metaphors from athletics and gymnasio, which means to exercise naked, to train. It's going to live off on a tangent here. It is not easy to find a good equivalent for hexis in this place, constant use. The difficulty is that apart from this passage, hexis seems to denote the quality that results from training, not the training itself, not the process, but the result, the condition which has been produced by past exercise and not the separate acts following one another. But our uncertainty about the detail does not carry over to the main thrust of the passage. I'd like to get to it. The writer is clearly saying that the mature Christian, the eater of solid food, constantly exercises himself in spiritual perception, and the result is manifest. Study and show yourself approved. He can distinguish good from evil, and therefore the implication runs, will not be in danger of doing the wrong thing to which the readers find themselves attracted. Lacking this perception, Christian service will always be immature and partial. BKC, Bible Knowledge Commentary on 5:11-14. It is unsatisfactory to remain a baby in spiritual matters. This is true because a spiritual infant living on milk is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. The words not acquainted might be better rendered inexperienced. It is not so much that a spiritual infant lacks information, though at first he obviously does, but rather that he has not yet learned to put the teaching about righteousness to effective use. He lacks the skill which goes with maturity and which results in the ability to make appropriate moral choices. But recall, this is about falling away from the faith, not gaining maturity, but going back to elementary things and then moving on to maturity. Such ability is exactly what is possessed by those who have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. But that's not a view here. That kind of person can handle solid food. Once more, the writer betrayed his concern about his readers' ability to reject the false ideas which confronted them. Had they been sufficiently mature, they would be able to distinguish those ideas as evil over against the truths they should have known were good. But he feared that this capability was not yet really theirs. It might have been, though he would make every effort to instill it in them.